I, 17M, have a strained relationship with my mom, 35F, after an incident that happened about 6 years ago. My mom was super strict and a helicopter parent, so we fought a lot over my grades and the trouble I got into at school. She had essentially abandoned me, signing over custody to my dad after I had told her something along the lines of, "I hate you," and, "I wish I lived with dad," which I said out of pure anger and didn't actually mean back then. But that fight seemed to have broken her, and she cried before dropping me off at my dad's apartment. I thought it wouldn't be a big deal and I would just see her the next day after she proved her point, but she left me there. After that, things got essentially worse for me. My grades dropped, and I kept getting into trouble at school, almost to the point where I was kicked out. My dad never had job security, so money was always tight. His girlfriend also wasn't fond of me, saying I was dumped on them. I wanted to go back to stay with my mom. I thought to apologize, but my mom had essentially moved on with her life. She went back to college to get her degree and was always studying, and later on, she was focused on her new work. On the weekends I would get to see her. Things were tense between us. She tried so hard to be the fun parent, eating takeout and leaving me to do what I wanted, but it was so unlike her, and we became more estranged. 3 years ago, she started dating Paul, 39M, a widower with 2 daughters, 9F and 13F. She started treating his daughters like they were her own, and they started calling her mommy, which irritated me. Eventually, they moved into my mom's house and changed my childhood bedroom into one of the daughters' rooms. I was livid when I found out, saying some mean things about the girls, and refused to go back there for my mom's weekends, but she was confused about why I was acting this way. Because of this fight, she thought I wouldn't be attending the engagement party when she announced she and Paul would be getting married. Besides, she didn't want me to ruin the perfect picture of her new family, so I made it a point to go to the party and called her out on her behavior. I wanted to confront her and tell her she wouldn't have to bother with me after I go off to college, but I may have taken it a tad too far. Everyone kept talking about how Paul's daughters were like her children and how it would be when she had more kids, and it snapped something in me. I called her a horrible parent and told her she was trying to replace me with the little brats after she had abandoned me, along with some other insults I don't really remember. Paul kicked me and my dad out, saying I was the jerk for making his fiancée and girls cry and ruining the engagement party. He said I wouldn't be allowed at the wedding unless I called and apologized. I may have taken it a bit too far, but my dad agrees she had it coming after abandoning a young child at an age when I needed my mother. Edit. There's a lot going on here, and I haven't had the time to look through everything, so I still haven't decided on what to do, but to answer some questions, my parents separated when I was a baby. My dad is 40 and used to work in construction until he got injured and could no longer pay child support. When my mom transferred custody, she began to pay support. I'm with my dad full-time and my mom on weekends when I feel like going. During winter break, my mom takes me out of state to Grands where we stay with the rest of the family. I can do the math. I know how old my mom was when she had me and that I basically ruined her life, so there's no need to point that out. About the helicopter parenting, I mentioned some of the things my mom did, but it didn't give the entire picture. Some people say it was just usual parenting, but it felt so constricting, and it was very different from when I was at my dad's. I also wasn't the smartest kid out, and sometimes it felt like I was being punished for that. My mom and I were prone to screaming matches if I didn't immediately do what she said, and no, I never hit her, it was mostly shouting. About therapy, I spoke to someone when I was younger, and my parents had me see the school counselor 2 years ago, but I find it hard to talk to other people. I'm also on meds, which were supposed to help with my moods. There is an overwhelming amount of attention on this post that is giving me mixed messages. I regret posting this because of how confused it has gotten me about my parents and childhood, but I do appreciate the support and advice, especially from other people who had similar issues. I will try and do another update when I figure out what to do. Update 1. So, a lot has happened. I never expected this post to get this much attention with so many mixed reactions, and honestly, it confused me to say the least. While this forum was blowing up, I had to go to school like normal. It's been a few weeks since the engagement party, and a kid who was there had been relentless in mocking me for what happened. I thought he would eventually let it go, but yesterday when he brought it up again, I lost my cool and decked him in the face. He was given detention but I was suspended. The school called my mom and got Paul instead. Since she was in a meeting, he came and got me. Things were awkward in the car ride, and we didn't say a word to each other until he asked me if I was going to apologize to my mom. I told him I didn't even want to go to his stupid wedding. Paul was confused when I said this, and told me that my mom had gotten mad at him for saying I couldn't attend and that she knew I wouldn't apologize if they told me to because I was stubborn. He said she had called my dad weeks ago and said I could go because she really wanted me to be there, and my dad said he would talk to me. I don't know why, but when I heard this, I burst out in tears, embarrassingly enough. I don't know if it was the suspension or reading all the comments, but I really couldn't hold it in anymore. It took me way too long to stop, and Paul was really freaked out, so he parked somewhere and tried to calm me down. I ended up telling him everything, about what happened when I was a kid, and how I felt about my mom. I also confessed that I wished she would yell at me or scold me for my outbursts because it felt like she didn't care anymore and just hated me for what I said. It's messed up, I know. I thought if I ever repeated what I wrote on this post to another person, they would think I was human garbage, but he just listened to me and let me get everything off my chest. Surprisingly, he didn't blame me. In fact, it was the opposite. He said he understood me. He works with her, so he knew that my mom was a tough woman, and he had never seen her cry before until that day and was unsure about how to approach her after, so he didn't blame me for not knowing how to talk to her after what happened when I was a child. He didn't give me details, but he assured me that my mom didn't hate me, and the situation is more complicated than what I know. Paul said I shouldn't bear all the blame, and if I was comfortable, maybe myself and my mom could go speak to the therapist he saw after his wife had passed. He was mad at my dad though. Apparently, this was not the first time my dad had said he would talk to me about something and just didn't. Paul suspected my dad wanted to get me to have another outburst at the wedding because he was still somewhat resentful towards my mother. I don't know how to take this because, while my dad didn't really like my mom, I don't think he would actually do something like that. Either way, I think I owe it to myself and my mom to at least try and reconcile and deal with my trauma so I could let go of my anger towards her. My dad wasn't home, so I spent the rest of the day at my mom's, and I at least apologized to Paul's girls. The 9-year-old forgave me almost instantly, like she didn't actually care about what I said before, but the 13-year-old is still pretty mad, mostly because Paul had her give up her new room and share with her sister. I tried to say I was okay if she took back the room. I wasn't, but it only seemed right to give it to her after what I did, but Paul said they'll make a plan when they remodel. I knew I needed to apologize to my mom as well, but that seemed just so much harder. I know you guys recommended writing a letter, but I didn't really have enough time nor did I know what I was going to say yet. There are these flower bushes in our garden though, and I have a vivid memory of when I was a kid, my mom getting mad when I destroyed one, only to forgive me when I had given her the flowers from them. It's a bit pathetic for her grown child to give her useless flowers because he couldn't get a word out, but I think the gesture meant the same for her like it did for me. She finally asked me if I was better off living at my dad's, and honestly, I don't know. I know you guys don't think the best of him, and things did seem to be worse when I stayed with him, but he was a decent dad, and I didn't want to just lose him like I did my mom. She said she would speak to him after our meeting with the school on Monday for the family therapy and if I was open to the idea of staying with her some nights during the week too. As of now, Paul had spoken to her and she already made the appointment for us to see the therapist next week. She also spoke to me about anger management classes too and said she would go with me if that's what I wanted. I honestly don't know what's going to happen with school, if the therapy will work for us, and if I will ever be able to truly let go of my built-up resentment. But I feel like everything's going to be okay. Thanks for all the comments, even the horrible ones, and to everyone who shared their deep and some dark stories that made them relate to my relationship. I hope things turn out okay for you too.